Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. We're continuing our case studies and reading from my dad's book, Criminal Case Digest by Attorney Diogenes Ahelion. We went to chapter 4 and discussed case number 27 or 28 with Remedios, Leticia, and Aurora defrauding 5 guys, Roel, Marlon, Rafael, Edwin, and J-Lord. So Remedios, Leticia, and Aurora were convicted of illegal recruitment on a large scale and 3 counts of estafa. So it is considered a large scale because it involves 3 or more victims, and it is a syndicated estafa because it involves 3 or more perpetrators. We also discussed what recruitment and placement refers, what qualifies the case and the actions of the 3 women against the 5 guys as an illegal recruitment. So just as a review, we talked about estafa as being a criminal offense under Article 315 of the Revised Penal Code. It generally refers to the crime of swindling or fraud. In paragraph 2A, estafa is where the perpetrator specifically targets situations where they give false pretense or fraudulent representation. Estafa specifically targets situations where the fraud involves misrepresenting one's authority, qualifications, or other similar characteristics to gain advantage, and in this case, financial. There is also intent to defraud the person or persons. Making the false representation must intend to deceive or obtain a benefit from the victim or victims. Actual fraud or deceit means the false pretense or representation must be used to deceive and induce the victim or victims to part with something of value or to suffer damage, in this case, financial. The act of defrauding involves the offender having actually obtained a benefit or caused damage to the victim as a result of the false representation. So Title 4 or Chapter 4 is titled Feather by Feather, the Goose is Plucked. My dad picked a quote from the book Marmion by Sir Walter Scott, and it reads, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." So the case we're going to be reading and studying today is regarding an actual employee of a Manila-based recruitment agency. So let's see what happened in the case. Here are the facts. Cabais was employed with a Manila-based agency, duly licensed to recruit overseas contract workers. During the period from February to May, she talked with the complainants Joan, Nancy, and Imelda on several occasions, persuading them to be contract workers in South Korea. In subsequent meetings, Cabais introduced to the 3 women, Joan, Nancy, and Imelda, her co-accused Fornias, who joined Cabais in convincing them to submit their applications for employment abroad so that their office in Manila could process them. Later on, Cabais introduced to them a certain Korean national named Harm Yo-hong, who managed to persuade the 3 to apply as contract workers in South Korea. So, convinced of the prospect of immediate employment abroad, Joan paid a total of 20,000 pesos to Fornias and 17,000 to Cabais for her placement fee, in addition to 3,000 pesos for her passport. Nancy paid 21,000 pesos to Fornias, while Imelda paid 20,000 pesos likewise to Fornias as placement fee. All their said payments were duly receipted, so they were given an invoice. After complying with all the requirements, the 3 were told to wait for their deployment. They waited and repeatedly inquired about the status of their applications. However, Several months passed and they were not deployed as promised. When they could wait no longer, the three women, Joan, Nancy, and Imelda, checked with the office of the POEA, the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, and found out that Harm Yong Ho, Cabais, and Fornias were not licensed to recruit for employment abroad, and neither did they have the required authority to do so. Thus, they demanded the return of the money they gave. However, they never saw Fornias and Harm Ho Yong again. The money paid was never returned to them. Cabais insisted that she was merely hired as an employee of their recruiting company. Her duties included processing applications for job placement, entertaining applicants, accompanying her co-accused Fornias, and doing errands for Fornias. Cabais further denied involvement in the recruitment of the three ladies, claiming that it was her boss who was doing recruitment activities, in this case, Fornias. She admitted, though, that she received payments from the three ladies, but alleged that she was merely acting upon the instruction of Fornias and that she turned over all the payments to Fornias. The question: what crime or crimes were committed by Cabais? So you have four choices. A, 3 separate cases of illegal recruitment and estafa. B, 3 separate cases of illegal recruitment and 3 separate cases of estafa. C, 1 case of illegal recruitment on a large scale with estafa. Or D, 1 case of illegal recruitment on a large scale and 3 separate cases of estafa. So what would be your answer if you would be presented with this kind of case? The answer is actually D, 1 case of illegal recruitment on a large scale and 3 separate cases of estafa. So let's look at the dialectics for some more details on why D is the correct answer. So the essential elements of illegal recruitment committed in a large scale applies to this case. 1. The accused, Cabais, engaged in acts of recruitment and placement of workers as defined under Article 13, letter B, or in any prohibited activities under Article 34, both of the Labor Code. And number 2, the accused had not complied with the guidelines issued by the Secretary of Labor and Employment, particularly with respect to the requirement to secure a license or an authority to recruit and deploy workers either locally or overseas. And number 3, that the accused Cabais committed the unlawful acts against 3 or more persons individually or as a group. So, large-scale estafa involves multiple victims. In this case are the 3 ladies who are Joan, Nancy, and Imelda. And because large-scale estafa involves defrauding several people, so it's impacting a broader section of society. So there's a significant amount involved because the amount back then when this case was tried was fairly like a significant amount. So what did they give to Cabais? They had paid 20,000, 17,000, 3,000, 21,000, and another 20,000. So that's a significant amount. Now, in the law right now is if you defraud over, I think, 5,000 or 10,000 or more, that's a harsher punishment. So that Cabais' defense was that she was not involved in recruitment but was merely an employee of a recruitment agency is not a valid defense. An employee of a company or corporation engaged in illegal recruitment may be held liable as a principal perpetrator together with his employer if it is shown that he actively and consciously participated in the illegal recruitment. We have a footnote here from People versus Chowdhury from February 15, year 2000. Recruitment is an act of canvassing, enlisting, contracting, transporting, utilizing, hiring, or procuring workers, and includes referrals, contract services, promising or advertising for employment locally or abroad, whether for profit or not. And this is a review from our last case. Any person or entity which in any manner offers or promises for a fee employment to 2 or more persons shall be deemed engaged in recruitment and placement. And then it becomes a large scale when it's 3 or more. Cabais was the one who informed the victims of job prospects in Korea and the requirements for deployment. She also received from them money as placement fees. The victims personally met with Cabais and transacted with her regarding the overseas job placement offers. The victims parted with their money with corresponding invoices assigned by the accused, Cabais and Fornias. Thus, Cabais, having actively participated in the recruitment of the complainants, despite the fact that she was just an ordinary employee of the company, she is still criminally liable as a co-conspirator with the corporate officers in undertaking illegal recruitment activities. Since the recruitment involves 3 or more persons, Cabais is guilty of illegal recruitment on a large scale, punishable under Article 39 of the Labor Code. So another fact is that just because Cabais did not appropriate for her own use the money given to her by the victims as placement and passport fees does not absolve her of the crime of estafa. The elements of estafa are A. That the accused defrauded another by abuse of confidence or by means of deceit, and B. That damage or prejudice capable of pecuniary estimation is caused to the offended party or third person, in this case, 3 ladies. From the foregoing, the fact that the money was appropriated by Cabais for her own use is not an element in the crime of estafa. The crime of estafa only requires that the perpetrator or the accused receives the money. It doesn't matter where he gave it to the company or whether she used it for her own. She still has to, suffer the consequences of her actions, and in this case, the charge of estafa. So, on a side note, as ruled in similar cases, the fact that the amounts tendered or given by the complainants were insufficient to cover the costs of overseas employment, or that it's not enough, or that the accused returned a portion of the sum of money each complainant paid to her does not negate the crime of estafa. It's the act of defrauding, deceiving, and accepting money. Criminal liability for estafa is not affected by the compromise or novation of contract because it is a public offense which must be prosecuted and punished by the government on its own motion, even though complete reparation should have been made of the damage suffered by the offended party. So Article 39 of the Labor Code reads penalties. A. The penalty of life imprisonment and a fine of 100,000 pesos shall be imposed if illegal recruitment constitutes economic sabotage as defined herein. B. Any licensee or holder of authority found violating or causing another to violate any provision of this title or its implementing rules and regulations shall, upon conviction thereof, suffer the penalty of imprisonment of not less than 2 years nor more than 5 years, or a fine of not less than 10,000 pesos nor more than 50,000, or both such imprisonment and fine at the discretion of the court. Letter C. Any person who is neither a licensee nor a holder of authority under this article found violating any provision thereof or its implementing rules and regulations shall, upon conviction thereof, suffer the penalty of imprisonment of not less than 4 years nor more than 8 years, or a fine of not less than 20,000 pesos nor more than 100,000 pesos, or both such imprisonment and fine at the discretion of the court. Letter D. If the offender is a corporation, partnership, association, or entity, the penalty shall be imposed upon the officer or officers of the corporation, partnership, association, or entity responsible for violation. And letter E. In every case, conviction shall cause and carry the automatic revocation of the license or authority and all the permits and privileges granted to such person or entity under this article, and the forfeiture of the cash and surety bonds in favor of the Overseas Employment Development Board or National Seamen Board, as the case may be, both of which are authorized to use the same exclusively to promote their objectives. So in any case, kabais is punishable by law under Article 39. So this case is pretty interesting because kabais, the accused, actually took advantage of the fact that she was employed by a Manila-based licensed agency to recruit overseas contract worker. So, but the problem is that she did not have that job description or the license as an agent to, as a recruiting agent, and she did not have the authority actually to recruit anybody. She might be like in a separate department, but she used the fact that she did work for a recruitment company. So that's, that's abuse of trust and abuse of position, right? So in this case, what do you think? Do you think that she was right all along to kind of like maybe promote her office by recruiting? So there's a difference with formally recruiting or actively recruiting somebody when you're not even licensed to do so, and there's a difference with just saying, oh, go to the office I work for because they can give you information about working overseas. That one is okay. But to actively say that this is what we'll do, we'll process the fees, and the fact that kabais charge them a processing fee and invoice them through the company documentation or invoicing, and she was not even in a position to accept any money, then yeah, she is guilty of estafa. So since we are on our second case of estafa, I will just review with you what are the elements of estafa that is punishable under Articles 315 and 316 of the revised Penal Code. So 1, existence of fraud or deceit. 2, causation or the direct link. Damage or prejudice as number 3. So existence of fraud or deceit. The offender must use intentional deceit, misrepresentation, or trickery to induce the offended party to part with property or money. And then number 2, causation. So the deceit employed must be the means that cause the offended party to suffer damage. So the damage must be the direct result of the action or of the deceit. And then damage or prejudice. The offended party must have suffered some form of damage, which can be financial or proprietary in nature. intro to our next case study. There are common types or modes of committing estafa. It's not just one. So one, estafa by misappropriation or conversion, which means it arises when a person receives money or property in trust or for administration and subsequently misappropriates or converts it to his or her own use. Number two, estafa by deceit or false pretenses. Involves misappropriation to persuade another person to part with money or property. Example, a person falsely represents that his own certain real estate property and collects payment from unsuspecting buyer and never delivers the property title. So that is a very interesting kind of estafa, because that also real estate estafa is very rampant in the Philippines. I am actually I have witnessed it personally, how people can actually deceive a senior lady in the Philippines in order to get money from her by making her believe that they own or they are on title for a piece of land that they're selling to this old lady. So I am proud to say that my dad had actually recovered the money that were paid by this old lady from the perpetrators. Estafa by abuse of confidence is your third type of estafa. Closely related to misappropriation, but emphasis is placed on the offender's breach of trust or fiduciary duty. And number four, other forms of swindling under Article 316. Includes cases like selling property already encumbered or mortgage, disposing of the same piece of property to different people. That was the case that my dad was handling. So, for next case, I'm going to read the case about that real property estafa. So, thank you so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe. See you again.